My name is still Adam Germroth. I'm a child of God. And I'm a drug addict of the hopeless variety. My sobriety date is 8/5/2015. And by the grace of God, thank you. By the grace of God, I haven't had to use drugs or alcohol in 6 years. So my story begins really normal. I grew up in an amazing home. I had great parents, very loving family. We went to church. I basically had the upbringing of somebody who should be a successful, normal individual. However, God had different plans, right? So I never saw alcohol in my home. Occasionally, maybe my dad would drink a beer, but growing up, we didn't have parties, and I didn't see alcohol or people doing drugs. And we were raised here at Calvary. We started coming to Calvary when I was about 6 years old. My mom got involved in children's ministry, and so me and my brother, we always helped out in children's ministry, in classes, and working with some of the other teachers. But there was always something that just wasn't enough, or I never fit in, right? So I never got involved with church classes, middle school or high school. I just felt like I wasn't like the church kids. But I also didn't fit in really with, at home, my brother played baseball, my cousins played baseball, they loved sports. I hated sports. I didn't like them. So I always had like this kind of issue trying to fit in or finding my place. So my first drink was at the age of 14. I was at a friend's house. His parents were out of town, and they had this huge liquor cabinet, which I thought was amazing. I'd never seen a liquor cabinet before. You wouldn't find one in my parents' home. So we got into it, and we thought that we would be so smart to take some vodka out and fill it with water. No one would know. And we mixed it with orange juice, and we drank. And I remember initially feeling like I had arrived. I loved what alcohol did to me. It made me happy. It made me joke. It made me be whoever you wanted me to be. And as long as you liked it, I was happy. But on the flip side, I drank so much that night, it was my first time as a 14-year-old drinking alcohol, that I got extremely sick. And I threw up the rest of the night. And I hated it. At that point, now I'm hating alcohol. And I swore that I would never drink again. But for some reason, I couldn't get rid of that feeling of euphoria that I first got when I took that first drink. It was like, no matter how sick I got, that feeling was stuck in me forever, and I was going to continue to chase that feeling for the rest of my life, or so I thought. So I was afraid to drink anymore. Actually, I really didn't like orange juice for many years after that. And now orange juice is one of my favorite drinks. But so then at the age of 15, I started smoking weed. And again, it was that feeling that I have arrived. I was happy. I could laugh all the time. I could joke. There was no problems. And life was good. So I decided that smoking weed was going to be what I did. There was no hangovers. There's no get sick and throw up. You're just happy and hungry. And so I loved it. And I continued to smoke. All the way through high school. And again, like getting into high school, I still sometimes struggled to find my place to fit in. The whole issue was I wasn't drinking or smoking just for the high, but I was drinking and smoking to find a solution, right? Because I felt weird. I didn't feel like I fit in. And as soon as I got loaded, all of a sudden I felt like I fit in with anybody who I talked to. And so it got me by. Through high school, same issues started happening. Weed just started becoming really not enough. And once you start smoking every day, it's like, man, I need something more. So I continued to chase that high that I knew I could find something bigger and better. And so I got into pills. I was first introduced to Somas in my later high school years, junior or senior. And that same feeling happened again. I have arrived. Somas to me were like a miracle drug. They were cheap, you could get them anywhere, and they got you so messed up, it was unbelievable. But the problem was, with each drug and each step up I take, you have to do more, and you have to do more, and it gets harder, and it gets harder, and I found myself, all my friends would party on the weekends. We'd go to school, and then on the weekend we'd go to a party and drink and take somas, and then it seemed like they all just went back to normal life for the week. But me, I couldn't stop taking them. I took somas every single day, as long as I had the money to, and I usually did. So the problem with them is when you take too many, your body starts to go into seizure, and you shake, convulse, and you can't control it. We used to call it the Soma Shakes, and this is how crazy the disease of addiction is that we thought it was so cool to get to the point of Soma Shakes that every time we took them, we would take enough so that we would start shaking and then pass out wherever the heck we were. It didn't matter. But we thought it was cool. You know what I mean? That is an abnormal reaction to a substance, right? Which is something that I struggle with. So I kept taking somas, and it got to the point that in the middle of the night at my parents' house, I would seize out, and I would fall into a wall, into a door. One time I fell into my TV, and it came crashing down. And in high school, we had tube TVs, so the flat screens weren't out, right? So I had 32-inch tube TV, and they're heavy. And I fell into it, and the whole thing came crashing down. My parents woke up, and there I am, laying on the floor. And they freaked out. They had no idea what was going on, and it happened for years. They would find me seized out in the house somewhere, and I'd either wake up to a medical team at my house or in the back of an ambulance. I had to go to the hospital and get all these brain tests done. The doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. My parents couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, and it got so bad that my mother would sleep on the floor in my bedroom just to stop me from getting up when I would start seizing, right? And so the doctors were like doing all these EKGs and like trying to figure out what's wrong. And this whole time, I'm sick, and I'm a selfish individual, and so I knew what the problem was. You know what I mean? And I just wanted them to leave me alone. Hey, listen, I'm taking somas, and it's fun. Leave me alone. I'm not, but I couldn't tell them. I couldn't tell them that the seizures were because I was getting high, and so I just kept it to myself, and I let them worry, and I let them try to figure out what these doctors had to say, and eventually it stopped because the soma stopped, right? But the drugs didn't stop. So because I moved on, and I went to Xanax and Valium and Percocet and pretty much any pill you could give me. And as soon as I found out that I could crush a pill and sniff it, and it would go to my brain and I'd get high just as quicker, I started sniffing them. And putting pills up my nose became an everyday thing. And it felt normal to me. And again, I'm a sick individual, right? And I suffer from this allergy of the mind, that when I put drugs in my body, I have an abnormal reaction. And my mind doesn't think the same as normal people's minds do. So I would mix the pills, and I'd cut them up, and we'd put 2 different colored pills in a line. We'd make these names, and we thought it was so cool. But little did I know I was building up a life to be an extreme drug addict. And at that age, I couldn't see it, because nothing had gotten bad enough. But in 2009, one of my best friends died from a soma overdose. He actually, he was eating a sandwich. We had dropped him off at home. We were partying that night, and he wanted to go home, and he was shaking, seizing from the somas, and he was eating a Jack in the Box burger at the same time. And he swallowed and choked, and then he threw up, and then he choked on his throw up, and no one was home to stop it. And so he actually died of asphyxiation. But this wasn't the first time it happened. We had seen him do this, and we had always been home, and we were able to roll him over and make him throw up, And again, like, these type of things are normal to us. Israel's seizing out, he's choking on his throat, roll him over so he can throw up and go back to bed, so we can go to bed. It was totally normal to us, but Israel died, and it left everybody kind of in a wreck. We didn't really know what to do. He was more of the straight and narrow out of a bunch of us, right? And so instead of it being a wake-up call, it fueled our addiction. We started taking Percocets. a lot. And I remember we were starting to withdraw. I was getting sick. I had never experienced withdrawal up to this point, but we hadn't found any Percocets, and my body's starting to get sick. And we have this roommate who would always walk around the house and say, "Hey man, I got that black. Hey man, I got that black." And I was like, what is this dude talking about, right? And he was kind of a weird dude anyway, but so finally I said, I'm sick and I'm irritated anyway, and so I said, "Dude, what are you talking about?" And he said, "Come up to my room." I'll remember that day for the rest of my life. So in his room, he was had a tray of tinfoil and was smoking some stuff off the tinfoil. And again, because I'm a drug addict and my mind's not right, I was mesmerized. And I was like, "Dude, what are you doing?" Right? And he's smoking out of a piece of a straw on some foil. And he's like, "Man, you got to try it. This is the best stuff." And I'm always searching for something better. I'm never satisfied in my addiction, so I'm always searching for a better way and a cheaper way to get high. So I tried it, and here we go again, that feeling of I have arrived. And this time I meant it. I was like, "Dude, I am home." You know, like, how have I been missing this drug called heroin for so long? And really, in the circle of friends I grew up in, I never thought I would see heroin. Never thought I'd see meth. It's like, yeah, who has that stuff, you know? But little do you know, it's right there the whole time. You just got to get to that point. And so that started my heroin career. And again, I really had no idea about addiction or withdrawal. I'm just smoking this stuff because it feels great, and at the time I have enough money to support my habit and don't have to go a day without it. So my heroin addiction took off extremely fast. And my life rapidly started falling apart. And I remember when I first realized that I was addicted to heroin because I tried to go hang out with some friends who don't smoke, and it's kind of a shameful addiction. So, you know, it's not like you go to a house party in your 20s and bust out a tray of foil and start smoking in front of everybody. Dudes are gonna look at you like, "Yo, dude, what are you doing?" It's a shameful drug. But it was the best feeling ever. So I isolated myself, and I only hung out with people who smoked heroin because it didn't make me feel weird. And I went to their house and I hung out with them, and all of a sudden, at the end of the night, I'm starting to get really sick and flu feeling and clammy, and I can't figure out what's going on. And then it clicks, and I remember someone told me, "Hey man, this stuff, you'll start withdrawing off it if you stop using it." And I'm thinking, "Oh dude, I'm withdrawing right now." So I left, and I went and got some dope, and I got high, and the feeling went away. And it was at that exact moment that I knew I'm screwed. It's either at this point in my life where I had this decision to make. I'm either going to go tell somebody and try to get some help, or I'm going to keep getting high and hope that I can figure this out some way. Right? But my mind, I have an ego problem and I have a pride problem. And then there's no way my ego was going to allow me to go ask for help. You know, I'm a man. I don't need anybody's help. I can figure this out. I can do it myself. I'm not addicted. I can stop when I want to, right? I said all these stupid things. But in the back of my mind, I knew I was screwed. So it just kept getting worse and worse, and it got to the point I was losing weight, and my skin color was changing, and my parents started to realize something was going on. And things would come up missing in the house. Cash would come up missing in the house. And my mom started doing research. You see, my mom, we always joke that her other job should have been a detective because she always figures everything out, right? She's really good, and it's funny because we used to make fun of her because she didn't know how to use a computer very well. And I think through my addiction, I helped make her an amazing computer navigator. So she started researching, and I think she realized and I'm pretty sure they had probably found pieces of foil with burnt black marks on it, and was able to find out what I was doing. Right, and I was living a lie. And I would borrow money for gas, and I didn't need gas, or I would get $5 worth of gas and $15 worth of dope, and then need gas tomorrow, with some kind of stupid excuse. But so I came home one day from, I don't know, doing something shady, and all my family vehicles are on the drive, like parked in front of the house. My cousin and my aunt and uncle and my brother, and I'm like, it's not a holiday today, right? And so I knew what time it was. I had seen Intervention, and I knew that it was no one's birthday, so something was going down. And I went inside, and there they all. They're sitting in the living room in a circle, and I'm a selfish drug addict, and I don't care about anybody else, and I don't care about feelings at this point. So I went into the bathroom, and I sniffed some Xanax. So I wouldn't have to have any feelings when I listen to them tell me how upset they are and how much they love me and how much they want me to get help. And I sat there and I just listened to what everybody had to say with no expression on my face. Right? I don't care. And at the end of the whole thing, they presented me with this contract that said I would complete a 126-day program at Crossroads, or I was cut off and I had to move out and they weren't going to help me anymore. But I'm a master manipulator. I can manipulate anybody at any time, and in my addiction, I'm going to get what I want. So what did I do? I signed it. I signed it and I said, oh yeah, give me a hug, let's go, I'm so excited, I need help, I want to do this. And in reality, I didn't want to get sober, and I wasn't about to get sober. But I played their game so that hopefully I could get some money out of them, or some time to figure out how to get my next high, right? Excuse me. Sorry. So I went to Crossroads. I made it 3 days, which was long. I made it 3 days and I bounced. And I said, this isn't for me. And I went and got high. And then that night, called my dad. He already knew that I had been kicked out. And he took me back down there. And they said, listen, dude, we're going to give you one more chance. But you need to figure this out. So I went back into Crossroads. And I made it a couple days and I bounced again. And I took a taxi. I was really good at hopping in taxis, getting to where I needed to go and bouncing and running off the taxi cab. You know, so I didn't have to pay, but I could get to the dope house. And because I didn't have a car. And so I kept going through Crossroads. I did, I call it the Crossroads Shuffle. They kicked me out of East twice, and so I went to a new facility, Crossroads Arcadia. And I got kicked out of there and I went back. And it was they made me do this 26-day inpatient program. And so I made it like 25 days. I made it almost to the end and I had heroin brought in. And I got loaded. And one of the worst things you can do in recovery is if you're going to go out, you don't take someone else with you, right? So I had heroin brought in and I got people loaded in there. Terrible thing to do because you're messing with other people's lives when you do that. But I did it because I'm selfish and I don't care about anybody else. And so I got kicked out of that one, and then I got kicked out of Midtown, and I went to all these Crossroads and I got kicked out. I went to Maverick House and I made it 30 days and I got high the first day I got out. And I kept going to all these places. I'd show up, not because I wanted to get sober, but because my parents wanted me sober. And I needed to manipulate them, and I needed them as a crutch to be able to get money and to get what I wanted so that I could get high. So I shuffled through these places, and my whole plan was to figure out how to become a successful heroin addict. If I could just tap in to this unknown resource and figure out how I could use heroin successfully, then I could prove everybody wrong who was doubting me this whole time. And I didn't want to accept that I was an addict, so I judged everybody in the meetings when I was living there and having to go to Crossroads. So anyway, we did this shuffle game, and then my parents let me back in the house, and I started stealing my dad's tools, and I would go and pawn them at the pawn shops. And also, I was doing labor work for sound companies, live sound and video and lighting, and I realized that the wireless microphones in there are, I can pawn them for like $2,000. So between stealing my dad's tools and pawning them, I was stealing wireless microphones and pawning them all over the valley. I would go to a hotel when they had a event. I would wear all black because that's what the sound guys wore, and I'd go in backstage and I'd take all the microphones and I'd get in my car and I'd bounce and I'd start having other people pawn them for me and split the money. And so little did I know that this whole time of pawning these wireless microphones, the police had gotten involved. They started building cases, and they're trying to figure out, every time one gets into a pawn shop, it's reported stolen. And then they see that Adam Germroth had pawned it. Then they start seeing other wireless microphones around the city getting pawned by other people. So they started following me, and they put together this big, huge case that, at the time, it was about 6 resorts that they had me stealing microphones from, and either me pawning or me having somebody else pawn them. So they were getting ready to bust me, and I had no idea. So I was in Scottsdale, and I was stealing from a Walmart. I'm not a good thief, like in a store, like retail theft. So I'm in Walmart for probably 2 hours, like trying to not look suspicious. Pushing a cart around. I got blue hair. My hair is dyed blue. I look like a tweaker, but I think that I'm like, I'm just a dude shopping, right? I have all these electronics in my car, and I have one of these security magnet things that I had bought from somebody, so I could go and take all the security devices off the expensive electronics, and I'm filling up my car, and I'm like, these guys don't know nothing. And then I get scared at the last minute, and I ditch the cart, but I take a pair of Bluetooth headphones, and as soon as I leave Walmart, the security guy is right there, just regular clothes, and he snatches me up. And he's like, listen, man, come with me, give me the stuff back, and I'll release you, you can go home. Well, so I believed him, and I went in there, and so he called the cops, and I got arrested. And I went to jail that night. I went to Scottsdale jail. And so I got a shoplifting charge. Oh, there it is. Did it just come up? So, well, I'll get to it. You guys can just look at it for now. Anyway, so then I got arrested again, and my car got impounded. And so this is the second time I'm in Scottsdale jail, and my parents aren't bailing me out. And actually, this time I was too ashamed to even call them. I didn't want them to know. I figured if I could just get out, I could go get high. So my car gets impounded. I get released the next day, and I'm withdrawing from heroin. I'm sick. I'm really sick. No one's answering the phones. I call a cab to do my cab trick, and cab doesn't come for like 45 minutes. So remember, I'm sick and I'm selfish. So my solution was to go across the street to the gas station and see if there's a car running. If I can find a car running, I'll jump in and I'll take off. And so, craziest thing, well, there was a car running. And so I walked around the car to make sure there was no kids in the car because I have morals. I don't want to steal a car with kids in it. And there were none. So I jump in, and it's a stick shift, and it doesn't have the shifting pattern on the thing. And so I'm like struggling to find reverse, and I'm dope sick, and all of a sudden I get it in reverse right as the dude's coming out who owns the car. And so I take off, and he's chasing me, but I take off, and I get the car home. I take everything out of it. That way there's no prints. I wipe it off, and I ditch the car. And 30 minutes after that, my mom's calling me, Adam, there's detectives at the house saying you stole a car. What the heck is going on? And I mean, quick. They were on it. The reason they knew it was me was there was camera footage at the gas station, which I just assumed wasn't working. And at this time, my hair was actually red, and I was just released from Scottsdale jail. So as soon as they put an APB out for my name, Scottsdale jail says, hey, we just released someone of that name, Adam Germroth. And so anyway, the detectives were at my house. I laid low. I didn't go home. I didn't call anybody for 2 weeks. And then I finally called my dad, and I said, Dad, I can't do this. I was staying at this shack in New River with no AC, and I said, I need to get my car back. Can you please get my car out of the impound? He says, okay, I will. And we go down to the impound lot, and he pays the money, $500 or something crazy, and we go to the impound yard, and we're waiting. It's like half an hour, we're still waiting. We can see my car. My dad says, man, Adam, I got a bad feeling about this. And all of a sudden, 6 SUVs come in, and they all jump out of the car with assault rifles, and they're screaming, get on the ground, get on the ground. And the lead cop has a pistol pointed right at me, and she's saying, get on the ground. And my first instinct is, because now I know I'm going to jail, I don't care about the cops, I care about I'm about to start withdrawing, right, because I'm sick. So I pull a chrome vape out of my pocket, and I hit it because it's filled with heroin. And that lady was this close to shooting me, right? And if it was in today's era, I probably would have been killed. Because you pull anything chrome out of your pocket with 6 cops with guns on you, and they're not messing around, right? So God was saving me that day. So I got arrested, and I got arrested for the theft of means of transportation charge because I stole the kid's car. And I got released to pretrial services, which is felony release. I was supposed to get an ankle bracelet, but I didn't get it. And I ran around on the streets, getting loaded, doing my same thing, stealing from people, going back to my parents' house and getting tools and pawning them. And, when my dad would find out that I pawned his tools, he would call me and he'd be furious and he'd be like, "Where's this or where's that?" And I knew that if I told him where they were, he'd take me to the pawn shop and we'd get them out and I'd have an opportunity to steal them again, right? Because that's how selfish I am. I didn't care about his tools. I didn't care about anything except for the fact that I needed to get loaded because my heroin addiction was out of control. So I lasted for about 2 weeks on the streets and I got arrested again outside of a park. I was waiting for the dope man. And for some reason, the parking spaces are going this way and I'm parked this way. But I think it's totally normal. I got the hood up and at this point my keys had been stolen. So my car, the ignition is drilled out and I got a screwdriver in it. And so the cop pulls me over and the first thing he sees is a screwdriver in the ignition. And I'm like, "No, man, it's mine." He's like, "Yeah, right." And but he looks it up and it was mine. And he's about to let me go and he gets a phone call and he answers it. And it was Scottsdale PD saying, "We got enough, arrest him." So that was the last day I was out on the streets. That was August 2nd, 2015. And that was a terrible day. So I got arrested and I went to Scottsdale jail. And I got booked into Scottsdale jail for 3 days. They allowed me to sort of withdraw in there. They feed you. The nice thing about Scottsdale jail is you get like these hungry man, warm dinners. You don't get that in Maricopa County. So like I got to live on these hungry man, warm dinners and flavored like grape water or something. And so it was great. And you get a blanket. So I get transferred over to Maricopa County, and that's the mugshot from Maricopa County.
Wow.
That was the last day that I would be free. And so I got booked into Durango jail. Never been in Durango jail before. Really just at first a scary experience and lonely. And at this point I've got no one to call. I've got no one who really cares that I'm there. So I knew this was it. I knew my life was crashing down and that I wasn't going to be able to get high anymore. And I was pretty sure that I was not getting out of jail this time, although I was a little bit hopeful. And I called my parents finally, and they had, I think they already knew I was locked up, but I told my dad, I went to my arraignment, I said, "Dad, I have a $30,000 bond. You guys got to get me out so I can get sober." Right? I begged him, I said, "Dad, come on, it's 30 grand, you got to get me out." And he said, "Let me make some phone calls and see." And so I waited that whole weekend for my name to be called.
Yeah.
"Bed so-and-so, roll up." That's what they tell you, roll up. And I never heard it. And I called him and he said, "Man, I looked into it, Adam, but you're non-bondable on your theft of means charge. You're stuck in there." And that was a terrible day. I knew that I wasn't getting out of jail. I knew that I was about to start withdrawing, and I knew that it was all over. It came crashing down. But I made a decision at that point that I was going to stop fighting, right? And the only way to get through this was to get sober. So August 5th, 2015 is my sobriety date because I had about 3 days in there of withdrawing and trying to get my mind right and get cleared. So I made this decision. It felt good, I guess, but I withdrawed in jail for 2 weeks, and I tied a garbage bag to my rack, and I was on the bottom rack, luckily, and I just throw up in that garbage bag, and it would just hang there. There's heads, when you're in jail, there's heads, dudes that are in charge of each race, and they were like, you need to clean the throw up bag up, and I'm deathly sick, and I'm telling them, F off, man. I'm sick and I'm not moving. So if you guys want to clean that up, clean it up. I was pretty sure I was going to get beat up at some point because you don't tell them what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. But I was so sick, I didn't care. I didn't care about anything but laying in that bed. And a public defender came to visit me. And so I should back up real quick. I had gotten page 2 twice while I was in there. So I had the theft of means charge. And then I got arrested on 2 different grand jury indictments on trafficking in stolen property in the 2nd degree, burglary in the 3rd degree, and possession of dangerous drugs and narcotics. And I had 2 of those. And then I got page 2 twice, so I had 2 more. So when it was all said and done, I was looking at 4 grand jury indictments for theft or for trafficking in stolen property and burglary, and an indictment on grand theft auto, which turned into theft of means of transportation. So my public defender came to see me, and she says, "Man, I'll be happy to get you under 15 years." And my heart sank, and I'm like, I can't do 15 years in prison, right? I'm 32 years old, I got a life to live. And I went back and I called my dad and I pleaded with him, "Dad, you gotta get me an attorney. This chick's trying to give me 15 years, she don't care, and I can't do 15 years. So he said, "Well, we're not getting you an attorney." Ain't happening. They're expensive, and my parents were exhausted. I had really wear on my parents' life, and I had pushed them to the extreme, and I had just done terrible things to them, and I showed no respect, and I didn't care. And then all of a sudden, when I'm in need, I wanted everything in the world from them, right? But that's what selfish drug addicts do. So luckily, I somehow there was a conflict of interest, and I had gotten reassigned to a pro bono lawyer. So when we went to my first plea bargain, they offered me 8.5 flat, which is calendar years. You don't get any early release. You do 8.5 calendar years. And I said, no, I can't do 8.5 years of my life. We got to get something better. So I waited in county jail for another 3.5 months, and I finally got a plea of 5 years. 5 years, they were going to give me 85% early release, and then I had the option to get 3-month early release on a Senate bill. So I said, let's sign it, give it to me. I was exhausted. I was sick. My life was in shambles. And I thought, man, 5.5 years, or 5 years, I could probably do, which means I would do 4.5 with good behavior. So I signed it. And I spent 6 months in county jail eating slop and wearing stripes and pink underwear and having no space at your own personal space, you know. I was just exhausted, so I signed that plea. And little did I know, signing that plea was the best thing I'd ever done. Amen. And it was about to save my life. So I went to prison, and I got on the yard immediately, and was just kind of scared, you know. When you hit a prison yard, it's like, and you've never been in trouble, it's scary. Dudes are looking at you. You got, you know, the head of the race coming up, wanting to see your paperwork, and telling you all these crazy rules that you have to follow. And I don't like authority, first of all, so I don't follow people's rules, right? So I'm hearing all these things. I'm like, dude, this is gonna suck 5 years. But I got involved. I got a job. I got to work outside the gate. I left prison every day for 8 hours. I was free, working in a park in Marana, and I started a worship band. My parents donated a keyboard and guitar strings and drumsticks, and I started a worship band in there, and played music almost every single day. I got a routine. I had never, in 32 years of my life, had a routine. I had no responsibilities. I didn't have to answer for anything. And all of a sudden now I'm waking up at the same time every day. I have to make my bed every morning at 7 a.m. If you're not in line with the chow hall by 7:30, you're not eating. No. Forget it. Figure it out. You know, they don't care. So you build this routine, and I finally found myself becoming a respectable man in prison, which is something I'd never felt before. I had people who were depending on me. You know, I had a worship band that we all got to get together and just kind of tune out the walls of prison and play music and just let go. And I got to go to work. I hadn't worked a job that I showed up to every single day at the same time my whole life. You know, I never did. I had jobs here and there, and I would depend on my parents for everything. So prison saved my life. It was one of the best things that's ever happened to me. And you know, you don't hear a lot of people say that, but I'll say it again. Prison was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Amen.
Yeah, and so I did my 5 years, and coming up on, and I should say this too, my parents came and visited me every other week for almost the entire 5 years. There was maybe a couple that they missed, but they came for and the first visit was tough because I hadn't seen my mom. She didn't come to any of my court dates in county jail. Only my dad did, so I hadn't seen her for close to 9 months, and so that first visit was tough. But we built a relationship in there. We would play board games that they'd let us have, Sorry, and and I lost. We were playing again because I wasn't going back to the yard with a loss. Right? And it's cool, you know, like you go and you have these visits and your families and your friends in prison, their families are there, and you kind of like build these relationships, right? And it was a time, it was 4 to 5 hours in that day that I was not in prison. And so, you know, it really contributed to my sobriety and me wanting to change and become the man that I am today. So I prepared for my release from prison, and I was nervous. You know, I'd been locked up for 5 years, and I'd never been a responsible adult in the streets my whole life. So I'm getting ready to get out, and I'm just like, what am I going to do for work? You know, is everything going to fall into place? What's going to happen? There's so many questions that just spiral in my head, but I just knew one thing was for sure when I got out, I was going to call my buddy Jay Dow. Jay Dow was my sponsor before I got locked up, when I wasn't doing recovery, but I was in recovery, right? And I would lie to him all the time, and he would take me to meetings, and he'd be in contact with my parents, and he'd know all the crap I was doing, and we'd come back from a meeting, and he'd drop me off at Crossroads, and he'd be like, hey, I'm going to ask you something, man. Were you high at that meeting? And I'd throw my arms up, and I'd get all mad, like, dude, I'm trying to do recovery. How dare you accuse me of being high? But I was loaded. I was nodding out in the meeting, and he wasn't asking me because he wasn't sure, and he wanted to know the truth. He was asking me to see if I would be honest. Because one thing about this program is it demands rigorous honesty. So if you're not ready to get honest, then you're not ready to get sober, right? So I called him. I got out, I called him, I said, hey man, I'm out, I've been thinking about you for a long time, I want to link up, I want to do my steps, and I want to get into recovery. And I hit the ground running. I met up with Jay Dow, he plugged me in with a sponsor, I did my steps, and I got to start working with other dudes. I got a service commitment. I got to do the Celebrate Recovery with my parents, which is one of the coolest blessings ever, you know, because my addiction has touched everybody's life that I come in contact with. And so today I get to make sure my recovery does the same thing. Amen. So my parents and me, we get to serve in this ministry at Calvary Phoenix, where I grew up, and it's one of the most amazing things. And I get to work with other people today. I got a job 3 days out of prison with one of Jay Dow's sponsees, doing electrical work. And that guy helped me get to a position where I was able to start my own electrical company. So now today I get to own my own electrical company. And
praise God.
Praise God. And I get to work with other dudes, and I get to shed a little bit of light, maybe be a beacon of hope for somebody who's struggling, right? And I live my life in Alcoholics Anonymous and Celebrate Recovery and my church family. And today my life couldn't be more amazing. And I continue to wake up with blessings every morning. And I get to play on the Calvary Phoenix worship team. Another cool thing, sorry real quick and I'll end, but I would get CDs from Calvary Phoenix, the worship and the message every Sunday. It would be mailed into me, and I'd listen to the band and I'd be like, dude, someday I'm going to play in that band. Right? And now today I get to play in that band. It's so amazing. When you just stop fighting and stop trying to do things on your own, ask for some help, get a sponsor, work the 12 steps, have some honesty, and then start working with other dudes. And it's crazy how fast my life has just unfolded. And I couldn't ask for anything else. So one thing I will say for the newcomer, man, stop fighting. Stop judging the dudes that are up at the microphone speaking and start listening to them. And get a sponsor. Work these 12 steps. Get uncomfortable. And start working with others. Thank you for letting me share.
Yeah.